Hey everybody, welcome back to Studio HFL. I'm Larry Powell, your host for this podcast. I'm glad you're back for another interview. Here today with Dr. Cathy Leach at the University of Tennessee, Professor of Trumpet, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
So I would like to get as much wisdom, both trumpet-wise and music-wise, from you today. So for the next 6 hours, we're going to sit and... Just kidding. And the listeners just turned everything off, frankly. No, I think what I'd like to do is start with your current position here at the University of Tennessee. Tell us what your responsibilities are here, how long you've been here. You can go in any direction from there.
Okay. My position here is Professor of Trumpet, and I have been teaching here at the University of Tennessee since 1981, so that's 37 years.
Wow.
And I have just given up the position of Associate Director of Undergraduate Studies here. I did that for the last 4 years. And there was another period of time, I think 1999 to 2003, I was Associate Director of Graduate Studies. So I've done those administrative kinds of jobs for a total of 8 years. And I'm also president of the ITG right now, the International Trumpet Guild, so I still have my administrative duties that way.
Something about trumpet players in administration that seems to be a natural fit.
Lots of trumpet players are good at it, lots of department heads and deans and whatnot, so I guess many of us are good at it.
So you have the normal teaching load of applied lessons for undergraduate and graduate level students?
Yeah, I have 20 to 25 students, and that's a mix of graduate and undergraduate. I'll usually have anywhere from 2 to 5 graduate students. We don't have a doctoral program here, so we have a master's program that includes across the school 100 or so 90 to 100 students, so it's a good-sized master's pool. You can do a lot of things with 100 grad students. And so, yeah, I teach trumpet, I teach studio classes, and I teach trumpet ensemble, various levels, and coach brass quintets. And we have a very active and fun faculty brass quintet here, so we rehearse twice a week, and then do tours and concerts and whatever else comes our way.
Wow. Very busy. I'm trying to imagine how you took on the department responsibilities on top of all that.
Well, I like to learn new things, and I worked constantly, I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. So didn't sleep a lot, but it is good to learn new things. I think if you're going to stay in the same job for 37 years, it's important to do that and just venture out a little bit. Notice that I always come back in, but I think that helps me stay sharp.
So a lot of changes in 37 years. I mean, that would be assumed that, of course, things are going to change, but significant changes that you can think of?
For me, or for the School of Music, or
sure,
both?
Or all of it, or in the students that come through your studio.
Yeah, okay, all of those things, I guess. Well, for me, for the first 31 years that I was here at UT, I was also principal trumpet of the Knoxville Symphony. And that's a 38-week season. There's a full symphony season. There is a chamber season that is 5 series of concerts. There is a local ballet company, and other ballet companies came in. There's a local opera company. There's a 5 pops series. So that was every night, nearly every week. And so that was my 2 jobs for most of my time here, which was great. And at the time when I was doing that, my colleagues, most of them here, were also playing in the symphony. Now, both organizations have gotten so busy and so demanding that there isn't anybody that is on the faculty here at UT that's playing in the symphony. They sub, but there are no full-time members. It used to be all of us.
Demands are too great both ways,
correct.
I would imagine.
Yeah. And so there used to be a nice input from both sides, a nice collaboration. There still are collaborations, like our building is right next door to the Clarence Brown Theater, and some of the most memorable performances that I've had here involved the symphony's collaboration with the UT's Clarence Brown Theater. We did a performance of a long run, 3.5 weeks or so, of Amadeus. We did a performance of Hamlet that involved the musicians sitting on big scaffolding and used the music of Shostakovich and Tchaikovsky and others. I can't remember who right at the moment, but it was fantastic. And this fall they're doing Candide with the University Theater.
Of course, with the Bernstein 100th
yes
100th anniversary.
Yeah, so there has been a great collaboration between the symphony and the university. So now we're all kind of busy over here, to the point that everybody plays a lot. We don't have really the time to be in the symphony full time.
So that quintet is a nice outlet.
Oh, it's great. And I love my colleagues, the brass especially, all my colleagues really. And they are, now I find myself being the elder statesperson of the quintet by 20 years at least, and 30 in even more cases. So I'm sure it's interesting for them, but it's really fun for me. I can keep up with them. So
terrific.
Yeah.
Standard rep and new repertoire, or
in the quintet, yeah, we try to do something new each concert. I mean, newer repertoire. So sometimes we lose the student audience when we do that, but keep doing it. And a mix of standard repertoire as well. And I like to arrange, so
nice.
I've done a couple of arrangements just for them, and more coming out. So
it's interesting. On my way down today, I was listening to a podcast, and Rachel Rodriguez. I'll have to edit that out. Rachel Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Now at UNT.
Yeah.
Terrific for her. Terrific for that school. But she was talking about brass.
And they're going to be here.
They all arrange. I think she had said in that podcast, they all arrange their solo works with that group. And I thought that was really interesting. And it seems to be that way a lot of places where people are less fearful of taking on the arranging responsibilities, and some really nice creative things, I think, come out of that.
Yeah, I really like doing it, and they so far have liked playing the things I've arranged, and that is what I have focused on mainly, is arrangements of things that can be used as solo features.
And you don't give yourself the melody the entire time, right?
No. Well, I did the Sanson Romance for French horn, which is a French horn solo, for the purpose of giving her something that would feature her, my horn colleague, Katie Johnson-Webb. And she sounds beautiful on it.
Very nice. Let's, of course, now we're going to have to go back a ways. Before University of Tennessee, where were you before this? Were you in another position in an orchestra, teaching elsewhere, coming out of school? What was going on?
I was coming right out of school, except that I got my master's in May of 1981. You can edit that out too if you want, but maybe. I already said it, didn't I? So the day after I graduated with my master's, I went to Mexico to play second trumpet in the Toluca Symphony. So for that summer, I was second trumpet in that orchestra.
Good experience with that?
Tremendous experience. Fantastic orchestra. Half the orchestra was American. And just as a cultural experience, it toughened me up. And at the time, it was very lucrative also. They paid very, very well. After I left, the peso fell, and it wouldn't have been quite so an experience for earning money, but I wouldn't replace that experience for me. It was hard sometimes, but I'm glad that I did that.
What kind of repertoire? I'm curious.
Standard. The conductor was Enrique Batiz, who's quite well known for being pretty tough. And they don't have union down there, so he would show up an hour late for rehearsal, and then you just had to stay there until he was done. And so all kinds of things happened that can't happen here, thankfully, because of the musicians union. So and met lots of people that I still know. I was playing second to Chuck Bergens, who's principal in Phoenix, and now, and so still run into him sometimes.
So that was your summer right out of your master's?
That was my summer right after my master's. And of course now you can't get a job like this with just a master's. So I taught here. I started, and I was 25 years old when I started teaching here. And after 15 years of teaching here, I loved the job. That's what I've always wanted to do, teach college trumpet. But after 15 years, I started thinking, well, I think I'd like to go back to school. So I did, because so many things had happened. Computers had happened. I did all my master's papers on a typewriter. And
I'll provide a link to a picture of a typewriter for those listeners who might not know exactly what that is.
And who would want to do a paper on a typewriter? It's so great to have computers, but all the research had changed. And also, after teaching for 15 years, I thought, I don't know if I can do this another 15 years without some influx of inspiration and learning and all that. So I got a leave of absence for a year and packed up and moved to Chicago to study with Vince Chikowitz, which I'd always wanted to do. And I wanted to do it before he retired. And I got in just before, I think it was his last year.
Terrific.
So I was up there for a year and just blew through all the classes in a year. And then I had to go up another year to take trumpet lessons in the summer. But I finished the doctorate in 2002. I was already tenured here, so it wasn't like I needed to do it except for purposes of being already tenured. But I wanted to do it just to learn some more. And it refreshed me teaching wise to be able to study with Mr. Chikowitz, and artistically I could listen to the Chicago Symphony anytime I wanted, and it was a good thing.
So you got to hear Bud Herseth and I'm going to edit this part out because I'm drawing a blank on Friedman. Jay Friedman, of course, is still there, and I'm trying to think of Clevenger and the brass section.
The brass section, yeah. Charlie Vernon on bass trombone. Yeah, it was terrific.
So that's very insightful to know that you're a Chikowitz student and not a trickle down like a lot of us are. You were a direct student.
I never studied with Arnold Jacobs. That's something I regret. But I'm glad that I was able to study with Mr. Chikowitz. And my teacher before him, my undergraduate teacher, was Clifford Lilia, and he's long since passed away, but he was just the best for me.
What school was this?
That was University of Michigan. And that was where I got my undergraduate degree. And I think a lot of people may not know of him now, but he had such a long line of students who loved him and people that were out in the profession. And his whole method of teaching was very patient, very common sense, nothing that I would consider weird. He used analogies a lot, like pearls on a string would describe tones. And it was just, for me, perfect. I loved it. I loved studying with him.
Did you go to that school specifically to study with him?
Yes, to study with him and for the band program, which was very famous at the time and still is. So, and I wanted to see if I could do it. When I went there, my freshman year was the third year they had allowed girls in the marching band. So there were 32 females in the band. I was one of them. And 300 and something males. So,
Good grief.
and
to even talk about that, even for you to say that right now, I'm still thinking, how is that even possible? Of course,
it
framed
was
in
the
today,
way it was.
framed today, and I know there's still a lot of issues, but not like that.
Yeah, it didn't really seem like an issue. It was a challenge, but we didn't really have issues. I mean, I think they had been through the hard part of that before I got there by making the decision. I know that the first year they allowed girls in the marching band. There were 3. So I think those are the people.
And those other 2 are still your best friends, right?
Those other 2 were, I wasn't there yet, but the 3 were still in the band when I got there. So they were reverenced.
That's a Big Ten school, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you had to march Big Ten style. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful I never had to do that.
Well, I loved it. I really did want to see if I could do it because I was from a little place in Vermont, town of 10,000. Our band was 55 members, and our marching was, we'd walk somewhere and then we'd play, and then we'd walk somewhere else and then we'd play, and it was a tastefully done, but it wasn't anything like the marching that goes on here in Tennessee or Texas or Michigan. So I really was a beginning marcher when I went into the Michigan marching band, and so I just wanted to see if I could do it.
Was this an education major or performance major?
It was a music education major.
So you wanted to do what with that degree?
I thought that I would be a high school band director, and was always and am still very dedicated to teaching. But as I got through about junior year, I started thinking, there's a lot of fundraising that goes on with this job, and I didn't know if I would be very good at that. And I had just become more and more of a player in that I had gotten into the Toledo Symphony when I was a sophomore, I think, or a junior. I can't remember which year it was exactly, but I was also in a professional brass quintet from the time I was a sophomore there. And so I was playing all over the place. And I started thinking that I don't want to lose that. So I took a year off between undergraduate school and whatever I was going to do next. I wasn't exactly sure. I didn't know what school I wanted to go to. So I was teaching 40 students a week, private students, playing in the Toledo Symphony, playing in the brass quintet, which was Galliard Brass Ensemble, led by a great person named Charles Larkins, who's still one of my best friends in the world. And so at the end of that time, Jeff Piper in February, I still remember, called and said, would you like to audition for our graduate assistantship? It's at the University of New Mexico. And I thought, well, okay. He had heard me play somewhere, and he had some candidates for the job and wasn't happy with any of them. And he said, well, if you come down here and play, I think you'll get the job. So I did. And yeah, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do that or go to some big school like the New England Conservatory or something like that. But it appealed to me because they seemed to need me. And it was part of the job was playing in the faculty brass quintet and teaching at the university level. And of course, that is gold on a resume. So when I finally did interview and started applying for jobs here, just with my master's degree and being 24 years old, they wouldn't have looked at me if I hadn't had college teaching experience on my resume.
So 3 pretty significant teachers that you've mentioned. Maybe compare and contrast their teaching styles and how that's become part of your teaching style and how that's even evolved over time.
The ones I've mentioned were my college teachers, and I've got some that I remember very, very deeply and fondly that happened before that. Should I go back to
please.
early teachers?
Sure.
Well, I was so lucky when I was a kid that there was a great trumpet player in the high school band that was, I think, 5 years ahead of me. So I was listening to him. I got in the community band when I was 12, and he was up there playing first trumpet, and I was, playing second and third for a while, and then I somehow got up to be playing beside him and sitting right next to him and hearing his great sound. He was a music major, became a music major at Hart College. His name was Gary Partridge, and he just retired from Hart he was conducting, and he still runs music festivals in New England. So I heard his sound. I was in the community band, so I was hearing older players, which was great. Reading every week, which was great. When I was a freshman in high school, we got a new band director who was a trumpet player, and he had been to West Point in the band there, and he taught me as often as he could, and started me on solos like Napoli and the Kennan Sonata, and he'd just give me stacks of music, and I'd go through it, and he'd help me with it. I was playing Napoli when I was 15 with the high school band, probably. I didn't know it was hard then. Now
it's amazing what you do when you don't know the difficulty of something, right?
Yeah. So I was lucky again to have a high school band director that was a trumpet player and took an interest in me, and so his name's Malcolm Rowell. He became the band director at University of Massachusetts, and he's retired now as well. And then the University of Massachusetts, there was a trumpet teacher named Walter Chestnut, who's no longer living, but he was a personality. He was energetic. He was super positive. And when I was in high school, at some point I started going down to work with him in the summers. And my mom would drive me down. It was an hour and a half down there from Vermont. And she'd go to the university bookstore, and I'd have my lesson. And he got me interested in starting a C trumpet, and he got me transposing, and there wasn't any orchestra for me to play in anywhere around there, so I just learned how to transpose from the Bordoni book. But then when it was time for me to play in an orchestra, in college I already knew what I was doing on the C trumpet, and so I was extremely lucky to have him. He really took me seriously as a player and pushed me, and
you were obviously taking it very seriously.
Oh, always.
Well.
Yeah. I was from kind of day one, I think. I remember when I was in 6th grade, I had a solo with the elementary school band, and it was, I think, Serenade for Trumpet. And so I got to stand out in front of the band and play ba-da, ba-da-da-da, dee-da-da-da-da. And we finished the concert, and the guy that was the head of the community band came up and said, "Well, you're a real musician, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I remembered thinking, well, obviously. But yeah, so I did always think of myself that way. And I think partly because my grandfather played trumpet and violin, and I actually started on violin too, so I identified with him. My great-grandfather played trumpet and violin.
But that was a huge advantage before picking up the trumpet. So reading music even before then, and having done some pretty major ear training with the violin too.
And we had a piano in the house, and my mother, who's just a really great teacher, she never was professionally a teacher, except she did work with some special ed students and as a substitute teacher. But she just leave a kid's piano book out on the piano, and until I was begging, "Can I do that?" Whatever it is, and then she would teach me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So those are
my early teachers.
Okay.
And then the three that I've mentioned to you, my University of Michigan teacher, Clifford Lilia, as a university teacher, was brilliant in a very soft-spoken way. There's a book out now, Trumpet Technique, that is a summation of all his methods, and it's, again, just what I think of as common sense material, everything that a college trumpet teacher needed to know at the time. I think there's been
Oh,
more.
not directed towards students necessarily, but towards teachers?
No, well, it's directed towards students. It's a resource book for students, and his teaching was heavily built around flexibility, which having good flexibility has gotten me out of a lot of playing jams. So he was very patient, made sure that you had good fundamentals and sound, and threw in orchestral excerpts all the time. And just, I couldn't be more grateful for him.
But when you had gotten there, you're not really... Are your chops in pretty good shape? Do you have major issues that you're still trying to overcome? Or is this just fine-tuning at this point?
I did a lot of things right, but I had a very low embouchure that slipped down a little bit. And by the time I got out of Michigan, I had to change it. So that caused me some consistency problems. And I always had a great sound, great musicality, but I was suffering a little bit range-wise. Piccolo trumpet was frustrating for me. And so I think Mr. Lilia did not want to change me because not everything was right, but a lot of things were right, and I was having success. I had gotten into the Toledo Symphony as a sophomore or junior, whichever it was. And I learned quickly, and I adapted to orchestral playing very fast. I was a good soloist. I already had a lot of solo experience by the time I got there. And so he didn't want to change me, but I could see that I wasn't happy. So I found a teacher that would work with me on my embouchure, because that was James Darling. Well, he was in the Cleveland Orchestra and played just about I think his position was utility trumpet, and he played every position. And also a great soloist. And I had heard a recording that he did of the Kennan and Halsey Stevens, and I thought, I want to sound like that. So he was in Cleveland, I was in Michigan, and I went down there, once a month for the year after I graduated from Michigan. And he helped me move my embouchure up, which was excruciatingly painful thing to do.
Emotionally and physically, probably.
Awful. And I had a hard time doing it, but I was still playing in my quintet and still playing in the Toledo Symphony, and I could still do that, although sometimes it just felt awful to me. But James Darling helped me. He said my musicality was way up here at a high level, and my range and endurance was kind of down much lower than that. And so I could equalize them by moving the embouchure up a little bit. And I did. And that's allowed me to play things like the Bach B minor Mass and all the piccolo things that you need to do principal trumpet in a symphony orchestra. And so it all worked out. And I guess with all the great teachers that I've had, I think you never get everything from one person. At least I didn't.
Right.
And that little bit of advice, take what works for you, and if it doesn't work for you, forget it. Keep learning.
Do you find any of his teaching style coming through?
Mr. Lilia?
Yes.
Every day. And I think especially I heard him say one time something like, the quick ones get it in 4 years. And then I always wondered if I was a quick one. But in being patient, just that little phrase has helped me every day. And I think a lot of my teaching was based on his teaching, but I was also really glad. In my master's degree, I studied with Jeff Piper, who was a Lilia student also. So that was kind of a continuation. And then, as I mentioned, my doctorate, I studied with Vince Chikowitz, who is
Vince Chikowitz.
And
right.
I was so glad that I had the chance to do that. And I got a little bit more of the in-your-face kind of playing, although I kind of always did that. But just the blowing focus of him was great.
Of all of your teachers, did a lot of them play quite a bit in your lessons?
Interestingly enough, did my teachers play? No. The middle one did, in my master's degree teacher, Piper, and I was playing in a quintet with him. But Mr. Lilia was not playing. I'd hear him from outside the door, sometimes between students. He would pick up his horn and do a few passages of something. Mr. Chikowitz, I never heard him play a note on a trumpet.
Wow.
He buzzed, but even that, very rarely. Very rarely. And he told me once he had picked up a trumpet a couple of weeks before that lesson, and he said it felt heavy to him.
Wow.
So no. And I think that is interesting, because those are two of the greatest teachers. Both of those people thought as two of the greatest teachers there were. And I don't think you find that now. It's not really possible to be a college trumpet teacher now without playing, or it's much less possible.
Well, I think about students that come through and their learning styles, and those that respond to the modeling, and those that respond strictly to instruction, and those who are more tactile. And, so you think about somebody who comes through and would really benefit much better from having it modeled, might not get as much out of those lessons with those same professors that you had.
Yeah. But scores of people did. And
because those teachers were that good.
They were that good. And yeah, you could get what you needed. And they were also extremely experienced.
Have you had lessons since Mr. Chikowitz?
A few. Not too much lately. Although I hear in my house what is a trumpet lesson just about every day.
But you mentioned earlier, even if you're not seeking teachers, but you still
listening.
Are growing, because you were talking about things that you like to do. What are some things that keep you moving forward and keep you energized and interested and excited about the trumpet?
Well, certainly lots of things. Listening, you hear somebody and again think, I want to sound like that, or I want to play that, or I'd like to do that. Having things in front of you to play, like quintet recitals and your own recital. I haven't done as many solo recitals lately, but I'm still doing them. And that's always such a stimulating thing.
Well, when I saw you back in March, you were working on Tony Plogue's postcards, I believe.
Yeah, I ended up not playing that, and I think the program was too long, but I did play 2 recitals this spring for trumpet festivals. And so, yeah, and I like to do that. And of course, playing in church or playing weddings by yourself and all that is still a recital, solo recital. And so church playing is very stimulating to me. So I like to do that. Certainly being part of the International Trumpet Guild is super inspiring. And part of the work, what I like about working for ITG right now as president, is just that I get to work with everybody. And that's very inspiring to see what everybody else is doing, what's possible to do. And everybody's doing something a little bit different. And, keep coming up with projects that you want to work towards. Like I'm thinking about doing a recording of arrangements of lullabies from around the world, set for trumpet. And,
a great idea.
Well, it's an idea. Whether it stays in my head or it makes it to a piece of paper and then a recording, we'll see. Ideas keep coming up, and you just try and find the minutes to work on them.
Listening, you mentioned. Let's go all the way back, and not counting your very first teacher that you were saying was sitting at the section. That section.
Person.
And was it your father or grandfather who was the trumpet player in the house?
Well, my father did play trumpet, but he was a dentist. So, and I never heard him play the trumpet, but I started on his trumpet.
Oh, on his trumpet. Okay.
Yeah, and I still have that trumpet.
But who Who did you listen to? Who can you think was, oh, that's the first trumpet player I remember hearing?
Well, at the time, again, my teacher, Walter Chestnut, would load me up with records. When I'd go for my lesson, he'd give me a record to take home and bring back, and then he'd give me another one. And it was Maurice Andre that was the person to listen to at the time, and Doc. So I think one of the first albums that I bought was a Doc album. It had the theme music from the summer of '42 on it. I still have that album. And really, that's who I listened to. And Maurice Andre, I mean, that made an impact to hear him. And then my teacher, Walter Chestnut, listened to him. And would watch the Boston Symphony on TV once a week when it was on. And beside that, you were kind of limited to the people in your town.
Because we certainly didn't have the access then that we do now, instant to YouTube or wherever to get that.
Yeah.
Who do you listen to now? Who really gets you inspired to pick up the horn again?
Well, let's see. I'm pretty much inspired to pick up the horn most of the time. But my favorite people, I love Hardenberger. I love listening to Tina Ting Helseth. She's wonderful. I mean, so many, really. Chris Martin, symphonically. Let's see. Those are some of my favorites.
Any particular style of music that you're drawn towards?
I like a lot of different things. I loved the orchestral repertoire and kind of miss the music, but solo-wise, I like the French kind of repertoire.
So let's talk about that. When you work up Levée or anything along that line, do you really envelop the style, or is it more personal interpretation?
Well, I try to be in the ballpark. You know, after listening to a lot of French players like Andre again and Eric Aubier, try to get, and then other nationalities playing those pieces, then come up with something that's me. That style seems to fall naturally for me. It was easy for me to pick up that style. Germanic be a little harder for me. So I'd say the combination of a little bit of me, but staying in what's appropriate articulation-wise and dynamic-wise.
Not swinging.
Yeah.
French. Right,
yeah.
Right.
Although there's some jazz in there, but.
Oh, sure. Well, the U-Boat Sonata.
Yeah.
The last movement has.
Yeah, that's another piece I really, really love. And right now, I've been doing so much administrative stuff. When I judged at NTC last year, I wrote down all the pieces that were in the finals that I was judging. And a lot of them I don't know. I can recognize them, but they're new and I haven't played them. So right now I've got a list of, say, 15 pieces of music that I need to order because I haven't played them. And that all happened probably in the last 7 years, that while I was doing administrative and now the being president of the ITG, there are a whole bunch of new solos that...
Well, see, that answers the question from a few minutes ago about what, and I know you're inspired to pick up the horn every day, but, it's like...
I want to play that.
And
you hear it.
And you keep growing. It's something new.
Yeah. And so, if I hear these solos that are so intriguing, I don't want to just listen to them, I want to play them. I never perform them, I want to play them because I feel like I know them better that way.
Well, and you might have a student eventually that you think that would be the perfect solo for them.
That's true. That's very true.
Let's talk about your time in the symphony, in the Knoxville Symphony, principal player. What kind of demands? I think you alluded to the B minor mass earlier. Is that something that you did?
We did several times, yeah. First trumpet is a heavy load. And it's the last conductor that was here for 10 years, Lucas Richmond, said to me, your job is such a tightrope wire, like being on a tightrope wire. And I said, well, I try not to think of it that way, but
Yeah.
he's absolutely right, because you have such hard playing sometimes with a full symphony concert, depending on what the conductor chooses for the repertoire. And it can be 4 or 5 really, really hard pieces. And then right after that, you might have to play something with a very small orchestra in a very small room, and that's very soft, and right after you're all blown out. And so it was a constant thinking about chops and planning and pacing and strategizing how am I going to, get through this and then go to this. And so it was great.
Memorable
But hard.
performances, quite a few, I would imagine.
Yeah, those collaborations with the theater company that I mentioned were I still remember those a lot. All the Mahler symphonies, I remember.
You've gotten to play all of them?
All of them.
That's
And
unique.
that's when I started thinking about retiring, because I said, well, I played all the Mahler symphonies, and some multiple times. So and that to me is the peak of being an orchestral trumpet player. There is nothing like that, nothing better than that to me. And within a Mahler symphony, you get all of that. You get to play loud, you get to play soft, you get to play technical things, you get to play beautiful melodies, you get to play staggeringly hard interval leaps sometimes. You get to play by yourself, you get to play trumpet trios, and it's everything.
I'm curious, out of the Mahlers, the first symphony, the original second movement, I think that was taken out, the Blamina. Have you ever gotten to perform that?
I didn't. None of the performances.
So you have to go back
conductors
now.
didn't want them, but they've done it here with the university orchestra, and had I've had students that have played that. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder why he took that back out of there, but nobody asks me for my opinion on those sort of things.
My conductors didn't ask me either. You want to play that? They didn't.
So, you're looking at the season ahead and maybe planning out, how you're going to approach things. Were there ever pieces on there that you thought, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble?
Yeah, but every year when this next season was announced, my entire summer before the season was dedicated to learning the whole season. So I'd have a rotation going, which, that was great too, because I was so organized and motivated. I would learn the whole season.
Well, that's brilliant, because you're teaching at the same time. So you're not going to have
I don't have time to learn it during the year.
That's brilliant.
Except I have time to revisit it, but I don't have time to learn it. And so I'd put on Herseth recording and play along, with the Mahler Symphony or Strauss or whatever we were doing, and I'd learn all the stuff that I could see that I knew about, that I could get hold of in the summer, and that worked. And then I could just review it when it was closer to the time. But then you can make all decisions about what horn am I going to play this on, and what mouthpiece am I going to play this on if it was a piccolo thing, and not have to be worrying about that in the heat of having students all day and all that.
The trumpet ensemble you have here at UT, is that part of the studio? Is that a requirement that they are part of that?
Yes. I mean, when the students that I have come in here maybe have had trumpet lessons, maybe haven't, in some cases. And so many of them, their entire experience before they come here has been playing in a band, a high school band, which is great, but it's not everything. And so I say you either have to play in a chamber ensemble, which can be a trumpet ensemble, or have a duet partner every semester in order to get a passing grade, so that they develop ensemble skills. And so we have once a week set aside for trumpet ensemble, and it's a pretty good length, over an hour and a half session. And I have found it important to take them to ITG as often as possible and play a prelude. And I've taken a trumpet ensemble to NTC 3 or 4 times. And this year NTC is in Lexington, so
right up the road.
I'm hoping to get some soloists and ensemble or two there.
I'm amazed. I knew you were doing a lot, but I'm amazed to hear the extent of all of that, and it's quite impressive. And
well, I'm not doing as much as I used. I mean, I'm doing a lot, but
I mean, the job in itself is enough.
The university,
not even taking on the ITG duties, or even the administrative responsibilities in the department.
And looking back at the orchestra thing, I don't know how I did that. Everyone else here was doing it too. But I don't know how we did that. Because just you'd go home for half an hour, feed your dog, have a little sandwich, and come back in for 2.5 hour, 3 hour rehearsals. So
one thing we haven't talked about is kind of a maintenance routine or a daily routine, something that you tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, maintenance routine I think is so important, and of course it evolves throughout your life, and depending on who you're talking to, you might pick up one little thing from somebody. But my routine now for the last couple of years has been I do a little mouthpiece buzzing to just get things going, and I like Bobby Shoe's flutter. Do you know Bobby Shoe's flutter, where he just does like a horse?
No.
That's his
Well,
beginning
I didn't know
of
that
his
came
warm-up.
from him. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it originally came from him, but he's a big proponent of that. And so a little fluttering, a little deep breathing, I do a condensed T-bow mouthpiece thing, combined Pierre T-bow, French.
Sorry.
Not
thinking
Tim Tebow. No.
I might have to leave that in just for comic effect.
Pierre. So I have a 2-page T-bow routine. I don't know if you've seen the 3 books by Pierre.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
T-bow.
I can just imagine
French.
you after you finish, one of the exercises is, genuflecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but
the 3 books you were mentioning.
Yeah, the 3 T-bow books, that's kind of a lot to do. So there's a guy, was at Shires, Jeff Chamu. Did you ever meet him?
I don't know that
at the
name.
Shires Company? He had studied with Pierre Thibault in France, and so he had a 2-page routine of Thibault that gets you into pedal tones, and it's 2 pages instead of 3 books. So I find that a valuable thing. And then there are 2 pages of the Clifford Lilia book, which is mainly lip slurs that I do. They're not tremendously difficult, but they get you flexible. And then stamp, about a 20-minute stamp routine. That's my routine. But I'll pick up things like Vinny DiMartino will come forth with some nugget of gold. And one thing he said one time that I started trying was his idea about starting on G above the staff, that you should play, that should be your first note. And I thought, at the time, I thought that was really strange, but I started doing it. And by golly, then you don't feel like the notes above that are so high. And so I've started doing that. My first mouthpiece note is now an F concert.
At the top of the staff.
Fifth line, yeah. And go from there. First note on the horn is an F concert. On fifth at top of the staff. Yeah, and my range has gone up. And I think that's partly because of that, partly because of the T-bow exercises. You eventually figure things out.
Very nice.
Yes.
This has been wonderful to sit and talk with you and to hear everything you've had to offer. And I just want to say thank you for contributing to this podcast, and I hope to hear you play again sometime soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again for listening to today's interview. I hope you enjoyed your time here, and please come back for more interviews. Be sure to share the news of this podcast with friends and colleagues, and give me a rating on whatever platform you get your podcasts from.